Hello, it is June 5th, and this is session number 2 for our live Q&A. Again, no one has joined me online, so everybody needs to write a summary of this week's lesson. Let's just jump right into the lesson then. One of the things about biology is the structures and the patterns that we see every day in biology. If you look at the cell of a human being with all of the things that are in human beings, including the soul, and then you look at the cell of, let's say, a mouse, they're going to look almost identical. And this is because God, in his wisdom, set up a pattern in cells that replicates itself and can be manipulated into all of the various life forms that we see on this planet. Everything that has life on this planet is made up of cells. And hang on a second, I need to get rid of somebody who's not in the class, but who thinks she is. Okay, all right, that'll be a little bit easier, I think, on us. Will be on me at least. So the creation of cells made it possible for all the various life forms that we see. Now, there are two types of organisms, two types of cells. There are prokaryotic and eukaryotic. The prokaryotic is the one that came first. All right, it preceded eukaryotic. The eukaryotic is the new karyotic, and karyotic means cell, and eu means new. So this is the new cell. Now, so prokaryotic cells have a membrane surrounding the outside, and then all of the little organelles, all the little bits and pieces that make up a cell are just floating around in this jelly sort of stuff called cytoplasm. And this cytoplasm, the organelles can slide in everywhere. And the DNA is just free floating in this cytoplasm. So if you can pop the outside of the cell, this prokaryotic cell, its guts basically spill out all over, say, the countertop. Say it's a bacteria and it's on your countertop, and you pop one of these cells and it goes everywhere, all over the countertop. The sunlight hits it then, and the UV rays destroy the cell. Now, this is bad for the cell, of course, because it's now dead. But in order to survive, prokaryotic cells simply, when they want to make a new cell, is they have that and they simply copy it, and then they split apart, making two identical, I mean identical cells. Now, this is good because then it divides again and divides again and it continues to divide and divide, and it makes a lot of cells very, very fast. This is how some bacterias grow so quickly that we can't keep up with them in surgeries or in some medical ways. We can't keep up with how fast the bacteria actually grows, because all it has to do is make a copy and split in half. That's it. And the DNA is what determines when it does its splitting, when it makes its copy. But it does that and makes the copy. But if I can kill off one of them, because all of the rest of them are identical, I can kill off this one too. That's the bad thing about being a prokaryotic cell, is you can kill them off very quickly. That's why we have Lysol, and we spray Lysol on it, and we wipe the countertop down, and we kill off the germs. Lysol comes from the word lysis, Lysis, lysis. And lysis is the term that we use that means to pop a cell. All right, to pop the cell is to lyse the cell or lysis the cell. And that's how Lysol actually works, is it pops the cells and causes the UV rays to then destroy any of the bacteria. Now, that's really good, being able to divide and divide and divide and divide. That's great. But getting killed off, that's not so great. So God, in his wisdom, did something different. He made a eukaryotic cell, a new cell. Not only does it have an outside membrane that holds all the guts of the cell inside, and I say guts, and what I'm really talking about is organelles. I'm talking about mitochondria and lysomes and Golgi bodies and all of those little things, those little organelles that make a cell work. So inside this cell, God took the DNA and encapsulated it into a smaller little chamber with its own cellular membrane around it. So you have a cell that has an outside membrane, and then in the center, like an egg yolk almost, it has a membrane around the DNA. Now, in order for that cell to go through and process, the process of making a new cell is a little more complicated because the DNA is separated from all of the rest of the cell, but it is able to do so by replicating the DNA. You've seen it. You've seen the double helix symbol for DNA. It makes a copy of that. It splits it apart, and it makes two cells. Each of those cells has DNA inside a membrane wall. So if I come along with my Lysol and I pop the outside cell, all of the organelles, all the guts, in the cytoplasm are then destroyed by the UV rays, except that DNA inside that membrane wall. It's strong enough to withstand the Lysol. And if you have DNA, you can make the whole cell all over again. This is why if you're on a term of antibiotics, you have to take the entire day's worth of antibiotics and not miss a dose, because you're trying to kill off something that can withstand a chemical onslaught, a antibacterial onslaught, a medical onslaught of trying to kill this bacterium. So all the cells for higher organisms, all right, you got your bacteria in floating around in prokaryotic stage. And then you've got the eukaryotic stage of cells, and that is for all the rest of life, all the rest of the life forms, from daisies to dinosaurs to dogs. Everything in the world has eukaryotic cells except for the prokaryotes, the prokaryotic cells like the bacteria and algae and other forms that do not have a nuclear membrane. So we are eukaryotic. We have eukaryotic cells. We can destroy the outside of the cell, and the inside of the cell will stay intact. The DNA will stay intact. Once you have the DNA, you have the entire rest of the cell. And you can make the whole cell all over again just by copying the DNA, and then bloop, and you have two daughter cells. And we call them daughter cells even if it's inside of a male organism, because they're identical and they come from each other. So they call them daughter cells. And these two cells then can take their DNA and copy it and make two more cells. And just like the prokaryotic that was dividing in half, splitting in half and making daughter cells, the eukaryotic goes through something called mitosis. And we're going to do mitosis and meiosis next lesson. This is a way of dividing the cells between body cells, somatic cells, we call them, and the difference between somatic cells and germ cells, sex cells, male and female sex cells, egg and sperm. And we're going to talk about that one on our next lesson that we have. When we're talking about these things in biology, keep in mind that although I may use humans or cats and dogs as my examples, those are only mammals. Plants also have eukaryotic cells. Bugs have eukaryotic cells. Fish have eukaryotic cells. So all of the higher organisms of life have eukaryotic organisms, have eukaryotic cells. So that's pretty much the lesson, the difference between prokaryote and eukaryote, prokaryotic, eukaryotic, and the difference between having that nuclear membrane. So write up your summary, answer those questions. What's the difference between prokaryotic and eukaryotic? What makes it so nice for, excuse me, a prokaryotic to multiply? You know, what's the good thing about being a prokaryote? What's the good thing about being a eukaryote? So those are the questions I want you to address. And I will see you hopefully next week for lesson 3. Remember, you should show up for these things because then you don't have to write up a summary if you're here to listen to me. If not, you have to write up a summary. Remember, it needs to be about 2 to 3 paragraphs and cover everything that I talked about. You'll have to do some extra research to make up 3 paragraphs after what I've talked about because I've only talked 12 minutes. Okay, I will see you then next Thursday. Goodbye.